Oh, there we go. Oops, the stream went down. So like I said, we knew everything was not going to work perfectly. We knew there was going to be problems. Sorry about that. So I've just created a new composition in Illustrator. And I'm going to now create my assets. So I'm going to create this creation station. So when we have various parts of this machine working, the effects will change. So I'm going to create a rough sort of screen size to work from. So I'm working to the rough dimensions or rough scale of what I'd expect my mobile phone screen to be. And I'm just going to lock this layer on a new, like so. And I'm just going to create a new layer on top of it. So I'm going to try and keep everything to this sort of box. This box, like I said, I've not measured this for scale, so I will have to probably scale this, but the reason I'm using Illustrator is I can adjust the scale to anything I want. And I'm just going to also reduce the opacity of this layer. Just so we can see what we're doing. We just want the outlines, really, to be shown, and no fill. So you may have noticed that we've had a kind of decrease in video content recently. This has largely been because of this sort of problem where we didn't know where I was going to be here, because I actually was meant to be having an operation this week, dental operation. That kind of seems to have fell to the wayside. So we are a little bit running behind on that. Let me just again get my channel up just so I can respond to comments. Like I said, I would love to be able to do this on one machine, but things don't quite. There we go. So if you've got any questions on Spark AR or other programs or things you'd like to see, please comment down below and I will try and react and respond accordingly. And again, thank you to my Patreons and subscribers to getting us to this point. So I'm just going to create my first asset. So I'm thinking of this being like a kind of conveyor belt. So I'm going to want a machine first. So the first machine I'm going to create is a pipe. That'll have a tap on it, and this will drip the particle emission out onto my conveyor belt. So I'm just going to create my tap asset first. So when I use Illustrator, I tend to work quite often in like block shapes. And I ain't too worried about the colour because I can always go in and adjust that later. So I'm going to try and keep this fairly simple, and once this is actually generated, all the assets will be available when the tutorial video series finishes. I am currently at work whilst I'm doing this, so you will have to bear with if you hear any background noise or anybody decides to interrupt at any point during the stream. I'm doing this during my lunch break. And in fact I need to add one more point so we don't have that issue. So just add one more point there. So if I was doing this with a more optimal setup, which I have at home, I would be using my graphics tablet. Instead I'm just using my mouse today. So let's generate our tap. I want this to be rounded as well, like so. And I'm just going to bring these points out a bit because it's a bit on the fat side. So to do that, I'm actually just going to remove this curve first and then bring these two down. And again, I very much am eyeballing everything that you see, because that's just the way I work. So the way I've always worked when I was doing freelance work up until now really, is I've always worked in a kind of ad hoc, innovative, iterative design process. So the way I learn things or trial things out is by doing it first and then troubleshooting it afterwards, and it's not the most optimal way, but sometimes as I work, an idea will come into action as I'm doing it, and I would like to then adjust what I'm doing accordingly post So I'm just going to select the shape and just split this into a quarter. So to do that, I'm just going to delete these 2 points after I've created a point in the direct middle. And again, making sure I have the shape selected. Like I said, for God's sake. In fact, it's probably easiest way is just to delete that and then just move this directly up and then change this anchor point handle to be. Okay, I'm going about this totally arse about face at the moment, which is not good. You can sort of see that the pressure of doing live streaming is already getting to me. It's not something that I'm super comfortable doing. There we go, that's a much easier way of doing it. And I'm just going to position this so it is about a quarter. Quarter on the size. In fact, because I can scale everything afterwards, I'm just going to bring the circle up and scale this circle in here. So I'm trying to make here is I'm trying to make the valve release dial essentially. So just click this a couple of times. I'm just going to change the colour so I can see what I'm doing. And again, this is probably not the best way of doing any of this, but I am working on a kind of an empty stomach. There you go. Select that, copy, paste, and rotate. So I still want to sort of try and move away from just doing Spark tutorial videos, because there's a lot more I can cover and want to cover that I think would be more beneficial. I still would love to be able to do a kind of more interview style show where we can talk to people who from different creative industries and share experience. I just think again that would be more valuable to the community as a whole. And again, let me just check my stream is still streaming. Yes, it is. Good to go. So again, like I said, this is a chance for me to ask any questions, seeing as I have closed down my social media communication channels outside of YouTube and Patreon. There we go. Again, it's not perfect, so at this point in time I'm pretty much just rapidly prototyping the kind of idea of what I want to do. Bring this into the middle of my shape. Group all this together. And just this colour. Call this property to be the same as that. And let's just scale you up a bit. And again, make sure you're centered. So at the moment I still think this looks a bit too off-centered. I know it's not ideal. Like I said, I'm trying to do as much as I can in the how I got allocated to this. So I'm going to change this colour to be, let's go with this traditional kind of red. So the thinking I've got here is, let's just get a paintbrush out so I can explain this. So my idea is that when you activate this, so when this turns 180 or half a rotation, this will fire off a value of, let's say, 1. When this does a full rotation, so 360 degrees or a full rotation at its own point, this should give us a value of 2. And once these two conditions will give us different outputs, so let's say I have this and then I had a console button down here. So if this button down here was pressed So if we press this button by a screen tap action, and this would equal a 1 as in on. If it is not pressed or deactivated, by default the value will be 0. So if this value is 1 and this value is 1, and only by both of them being activated by the switch, then we want the output action to be, let's say, 3. And this output action will then be linked to an effect such as particle 1, for example. However, if this is on and this is linked to 2, we want this to be a different output, and this to then give us particle effect 2. So the idea is, depending on how everything is interacts with each other and how these numbers and values correlate to each other, will depend on how our particles or filter or whatever we want it to do or motion will be handled. So this is a build-up of the kind of earlier tutorial on object touching and interactions with animation sequences, but we're going a step further. We're going to start adding in interactions for touch and logic gates in there. So we'll be using mostly AND gates, but we will also be using an XOR gate, so an AND OR gate essentially. So it's either yes or no or both values, to be able to dictate how our end effect looks. What I'd also love is for this to have two options. So this would work on a 2D plane where it's tracked on a poster, but then if we used to flip the camera to be on a face tracking effect, I would like it to then be based on the values that we've done within the back camera, those values to then impact what the effect will look like on the face mesh or face effect. So the idea of the brain kind of being exploding almost with the ideas and creations that are generated through this factory. So this effect will look different for each user. So there'll be very preset values, such as when this button is pressed or when this dial is turned, then X, Y, and Z happens. But we also want some randomness in there. So we will be implementing the randomizer into this as well. So when we press the random button, it will randomize, for example, the look of a robot's head or robot component, for example, and that will then depend on and change how that person or effect end up looking. And like I said, we're still in the very early stages of this, so I'm very much conceptualizing, and in my head I know what it is I want. Visualizing it is another matter. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly see if I can switch to a whiteboard view, so I can show you a kind of the process I go through typically when I'm doing this sort of thing. So I'm just going to launch my IP camera. So again, I'm having to do this very ad hoc. This is the first time I've done this, so this may not work. We will very quickly find out. Oh God, there we go. And I want this to be on my mobile on. And let's see if this is going to kick in at any time soon. So let's just check out the camera's launching. There we go. So camera is launching there. Why is this input not taking it? Okay, let's just delete that. Okay, I'll have to show you through this method instead. Not ideal, but it'll work. So, what I tend to do whenever I'm doing anything ideation-wise is I always try and work from pen and paper first. So, what I'm trying to say is the next tutorial is we're going to have our phone, and we're going to have two actions, one for our front camera and one for our back camera. So we'll be able to detect whether the front camera is active and vice versa with the back camera. So our front camera, which will be our face effect. So we have our face. When this is tracked, we're going to have this kind of brain ideas swimming around it. and each of these will be separate components, which will be controlled by separate null parentages. So these null parentages we will assign an ID, so let's say creation number 1. So whenever creation number 1 is generated, and this generation will happen via the back camera, then it will check for the values that we've created within that output. So we're going to have pipes like this. We're going to have, by animation sequences, some pistons that move forwards and backwards at the top. So again, we're going to go with a kind of semi-cartoonish look. So the animation sequence will be created in After Effects for myself, and it'll just be a series of PNG images. Now, whether this piston is moving or not moving will be controlled by an animation player with a transition patch linked to that. And then basically whether that's what stage that is at will be controlled via some form of button. So we try to build up this kind of console at the bottom, almost, which will be our desk in this case. So we would need one button, let's say, for piston. Then we'd have a kind of maybe a key code. And depending on what the key code entry is in here, depends on what the effect will be for that parentage. So the way we can do this is we can take the first input of each of these presses to go into a value box here. So once we press, let's say 1 is going to here, these would all change and then give us a duplicate value on top. So these layers will turn off, another layer will turn on, with each of these being separate instance. So as I press 1 again, it then gives a new 1 again. The reason I do it this way is this way we can take 6 values, for example. So we can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But once we've activated one of these, it will then swap it out with a new lot without the user knowing. Because otherwise, how are we going to be able to tell it that we press 1, 4, and 5, or 1, 3, and 4? Which is again just to make things easier. And again, we'll work this out more as we go through the process. So we want to have dials that turn that give us different values depending on the position, and this will be handled by our rotation and a transition. And this transition will output a value, and then once that value is achieved, that will then be compared via and. So if this is 1 and this value here is 2, only then will it fire a signal to set the visibility or material option of our object to be what we have told it to be. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly swap back to our live view. So let's just, there we go, like so. And again, this is very kind of ad hoc way of doing this. So I've just had a question come through saying, can you do an animated frame Spark AR next time? So I am going to look at doing a animated frame tutorial. This actually will be part of this greater project that we're working on. I say greater project, it's not actually that difficult, it's going to require a lot of assets, hence why I'm trying to work on some of it, or at least get the logic pinpointed today. Okay, so let me just remove all of this rubbish that I've just cluttered my screen with. Go away. There we go. There we go. So I try and previous things on paper first, get the logic down, and then I can start making the assets, and then only from that point on can I start then inputting them. I will be making my animation sequences in After Effects. Now the other way of doing it would be to create a Photoshop file or GIMP file or any program that you choose of a frame, save that frame as frame 1, move something slightly, save as frame 2, etc, etc. Basically how you would do traditional flash style animation or stop motion animation, for example. If you wanted something that was more accurate to kind of photoreal, you could just take a photo sequence and use that, and that's how you could do things like claymation, for example. So yeah, the reason I don't do live streams very often is because it puts me under a lot of pressure. I quite like the option of being able to edit and free think, so I am very much uncomfortable with doing this, as you can tell. But I'm just aware that I have not been able to get a video upload today, so apologies for that. We're still a little bit behind where I'd like to be, but I am aiming to have this, or at least part 1 of this series, ready on Friday, which will be in edited form, not this rambling nonsense. So I'm just going to focus now on creating the assets. So I'm still thinking what kind of art style I actually want to go with. I'm still very much at the moment just blocking everything out. Like so. Copy this, paste this, object, transform, reflect. There we go. So I'm thinking this is like I was thinking kind of like we're going to have a panel at the front with our buttons on. Up here we're going to have a little DeLorean style timer, which will have different values of the numbers. So this will be our numerical display. So this will tell us what our kind of random seed almost is. This won't be fully random, but the kind of seed that we're generating by having this on, this on, this on, and this on. And once all those numbers match up, we'll be able to work out what that effect would be. So in theory, the end user would be able to say, if they wanted to have a sort of little cat or something running around their head, they would know, for example, to get that effect, it would be 1, 4, 2, 2. Therefore, to be able to achieve that. And by adjusting the dial to reach those values, that effect would play. Now, this effect may not be deployable because I think we may be running danger of making this file too large. But my intended end use for this would be something like a exhibition space. So something like Spark AR doesn't allow you to display your effect on a second screen natively, so this is something you probably want to do using Lens Studio, but the principles should still be the same. So there we go. And like I said, I'm very much just blocking things out. Is there anything that anybody wants to see at any point? Always just let me know. I do very much work to what people request, and I have quite a few big ambitious videos planned, including some on virtual live production and the also long awaited and often requested VR videos from places where I work. Yeah. So this will be our console, and we may also have a little lever maybe. So if we add this lever, let's say here, this gives us an extra option. And this lever we could also operate in a similar vein, so depending on what state it's in, so whether it's pressed once, it goes to one position, pressed again, it goes to another position. So depending on those positions, we can then start to say comparative value checking. So again, we're going to be using principles that we've used in other tutorials, like the random values for sound, but we're just building it into, again, combining all these skills that we've generated in all those videos to make something unique. So we're going to try and make this a quite a complicated effect, and like I said, once this is all finished and the series finishes with this project, all the assets will be available via the Patreon Tier 1 option. There we go. We could also turn this into a slot machine, but I think in a sort of factory might just give us a bit more kind of fun avenues to go with. So we're going to have a pipe there, we're going to have a piston. So at this point in time, I'm still kind of ideating and designing and working out where I want things to go. So what you see here is just basic shapes, and we will then take these basic shapes and generate the independent assets afterwards from that. It's just again, the way I've always worked is I like to visualize what I'm going to do and then refine it afterwards. There's no point in me spending half an hour to an hour making a pipe look super realistic or super amazing, because that half an hour to an hour is just you watching me working on a pipe. So I have this here, then up here we're going to have some form of funnel maybe, or tube. So there we go. So this will, again, we'll just give us another colour so we can differentiate our components. So this is a rough mock-up of the back camera, so this would only be shown when a target is shown. What I'm going to do also is when this is not detected or the poster is not detected, we're going to have a little UI image here that would appear when the target is not tracked, and this would kind of add to the narrative that we're trying to build, which would be that you basically landed or sort of walked into this weird factory or inside inner workings, and only by finding this hidden image or target will you be able to generate new ideas and reinvigorate creativity into the world that you're from. So this, for example, could be like a symbol of the corporation, and because Spark AR does not like you using text, we would have to use text very sparingly. So it would be, I'd have to kind of almost design the text to be part of the graphic, but for now let's just say again, I haven't really got a name for this yet. Oh, my stream's just cut out. Out? No. Okay, so I thought my stream died on me. Let's go back to this. So, properties. Let me just increase the size of this. Scan. So we have our back camera view, we have our target or image that's shown when our target is not created. We need to make sure that our final poster or design has to be enough detail in it for it to be tracked. Just got another question through. Do you know a way of making a smooth flicker animation of an object, not just a toggle visibility, should be smooth, sort of a quick fade in, fade out? So, trying to think of a solution for that. So natively within the controls of the program itself, we can't really do that just using the patch editor. Let me just launch Spark AR and I'll explain this visually. Also go through this. Let's just open up a new project quickly. There we go. Add frame. So create material for that and then set material. So if we look at our material properties here, you notice that our render options for opacity, we don't have this option to link it to our patch editor. So we can't natively control that using the patch editor itself. However, we can by JavaScript do this. Now, if you've watched a earlier video on this channel to do with the native UI slider, you'll note there is a script attached to that where we can actually adjust the opacity of a material that is assigned to an object via that. So by using that opacity, we can link that to a controller. So by default within that script, it's linked to a native UI slider. But if we change that script to be a kind of wait on time, or when X, Y, or Z is visible, then fade, that's a way we could do it. We can't do it via patch. It's a simple answer. It has to be done by JavaScript. And I'm not going to go through JavaScript today, but I might revisit that. I do mean to come back to doing more JavaScript videos. There are some fantastic tutorials out there. One channel that I currently recommend is a channel by the name of New Color Studio. Now, this guy does quite a bit with JavaScript and Spark AR, and he's been doing quite a bit with JavaScript and native UIs. And I would definitely encourage you, if you've really got a query about JavaScript and want a quicker answer than what I can provide you, to possibly give that channel a sort of view and contact them. But like I said, I don't think there's a way of doing it via Spark AR patch editor. I think it has to be done via JavaScript. And I can't go through JavaScript today because I am very limited for time on today's session. I hope that helps. So let's just go back to my layer, select my locked layer. There we go. So this is what happened on my back camera. On my front camera, let's just put a quick, super crude representation of a person. So this is the user. When this user is detected, we want this to control and show an applied effect. Now, exactly how this effect will be looked at the end, we're still an eye, but this should definitely be controlled via what our values are in our machine from our back camera view. So what I'm thinking of doing is, I think I would need a little screen up here which gives us the value that is generated down here and displayed down here. So these two are showing the same values, so this would be our sort of seed for the effect. I might also look into whether we can actually use the dynamic text as a way of inputting text into this box here, so we could overwrite the seed and have the effect play without going through the target tracking process. And again, I won't really know about that until I play about with it more, and I need to build everything first before I can play with it. So with our front camera, we're going to have a variety of areas. So these areas will be a kind of effect areas, and we could, for example, these would either be all located over the top of the user or different positions around the user, and these would be controlled by each individual value. So if this value up here was, let's say the first value is 1 in our 1422, if this is 1, this correlates to what is displayed here. If the second value is 4, this will change and correlate to what is shown in this area here. If it is 2, it will correlate and change to what is shown there, and so on. This way we're kind of having these zones that are each represented by an individual value. It's only by the multitude of these values combining that will generate our unique effect. And like I said, this is going to be quite ambitious and complex, hence why it's going to be almost a mini series in its own right, and it may take some time for the entire series to be completed, but it's something I want to try out and try and combine all the skills and knowledge that we've done in previous videos into one effect would be the goal and dream. Okay, so let's just see if I can zoom this forward. Okay. So sadly, opacity has to be done by a script. There's quite a few things that Spark AR can't be handled through Patch Editor, and I've tried to keep away from script. Not because I'm not comfortable with JavaScript, because I can deal with it if I have to. It's more just because I try and intend my videos to always be created for somebody who does not want to touch code or wants to get to the very basic what you see, what you get, visualization of how to generate something before I get into the scary code-focused world that is JavaScript. And again, there are plenty of better people out there who've already done videos on JavaScript who I really would just say watch them rather than come to me for that, because I'll be much quicker and able to give you an answer for that than I would just because I'm working through a backlog at the moment. Okay, let me just close my webcam, because my turn that off. Okay. Okay. So yeah, again, it's different people have different skills, and not to get to one person for everything. So whilst I've got your attention, I put this call out earlier in the year, but I'm still looking for people to share their creations with me. I would love to see what you guys create and be able to share it and promote it. If you've got a channel or know somebody who has some great tutorials or wants to be featured, I would happily put them onto my recommended channels list on the side of my front page. Again, these channels will have to be, I will check these channels first to make sure they are appropriate for my audience. But I am trying to slowly move away from Spark. We're kind of coming to what I think it may be the end of season 1 of Spark AR videos. This would be a kind of grandiose finale, which would be combining everything into this one ambitious project. So, like I said, I'm going to continue working on those assets in my own time, just because time-wise I don't want to sort of focus heavily on that at the moment. If you haven't already followed or subscribed, then please do. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. This channel is purely ran and funded by your AdSense and by Patreon support. We do not want to ever charge for our services. I'm still considering whether or not to consider commissions for. Yeah. So yeah, I want to try and consider doing commissions or one-to-one sessions in the future, if required. But we still don't have any systems in place for that. All the assets and templates are available by the Patreon pack in the $10 tier, which is the lowest price I can make, and increasingly becomes better value over time. Everything I do and work on is always going to be made as simple as possible, and I will try and keep trying to keep my videos to a doof format, except for obviously live streams like this, which are more impromptu. So thank you for watching. I'm going to continue working on this in effect. If you have any questions, please remember to comment down below or reach me via my Patreon page. Now, for the next 15 minutes, I will be running a live stream on my Patreon page just for my patrons, which will go through some different things and cover different questions I've got through that channel. So thank you for watching, and I will see you again soon. Goodbye.